When Cancer does not forgive nor forget, the tides of emotion no longer soothe but crash with ancient fury, echoing the primal roars of the moon herself. Governed by the moon, Cancer is a sign of deep sensitivity, sacred memory, and an emotional intelligence that flows beneath the surface like an oceanic trench, silent, unseen, and immeasurably profound. Yet when this guardian of the Zodiac, the celestial protector of hearth and heart, chooses not to release a wound, the emotional undercurrent transforms into a tidal force capable of rewriting destinies. Cancer is not one to anger easily. This sign nurtures, shelters, and shields. It carries others' pain as if it were its own, weaving empathy into every interaction. But betrayal, when it pierces the shell, is not merely an act of harm. It is an existential threat to the very foundations of their emotional sanctuary. To be wounded by someone they allowed into their sacred space is not a mere slight. It is a desecration. And when that boundary is breached, Cancer, so often underestimated in its gentleness, rises like a storm-laden sea. The refusal to forgive or forget is not born of cruelty or vindictiveness, but of principle. Cancer remembers everything because memory is the soul's language. They carry the past not as baggage, but as a sacred archive. Each scar is a page, each heartbreak a chapter, and they reread them not to suffer, but to understand, to protect, to honor the truths that pain has carved into their being. To let go too easily would be to dishonor the magnitude of what was lost or betrayed. There is a loyalty to their own pain, because it signifies that love once bloomed there. Underneath the surface, where others forget, Cancer remembers. They replay words, intonations, glances. The things others cast off as ephemeral, Cancer stores like a historian guarding relics of emotional history. This power of recall can be a gift of great insight and empathy, but when shadowed by hurt, it becomes a fortress built not of protection, but of defense. They retreat into their shell not just to escape, but to guard the sacred core that now bleeds in silence. When Cancer does not forgive, it is the moon in eclipse. The light is still there, but hidden behind shadows cast by betrayal and grief. And when they do not forget, it is not because they cannot, but because they will not allow themselves to be wounded by the same force twice. Their memory becomes a map, a warning, a guide to avoid the broken ground where trust once stood. In their epic silence, there is a tale of resilience. Cancer does not strike back like Aries or cut with the cold blade of Aquarius. Their vengeance, if it comes, is not overt. It is dignified, unspoken, and eternal. They withdraw their light, their care, their loyalty, and in doing so, they leave a void so cavernous that those who wrong them often feel it long after the initial act. Their absence becomes a haunting. The warmth that once surrounded others like a protective tide now recedes, and with it goes the sanctuary of their presence. This is not weakness. This is ancient power. This is the armor of a soul that has faced centuries of storms and still dares to feel. Cancer's inability to forget is their mythic memory. Their unwillingness to forgive is their declaration of sacred boundaries. In a world that asks the wounded to smile and move on, Cancer stands as a testament to the idea that not all injuries are meant to be dismissed, that some betrayals are grave enough to be remembered forever. And yet, even in this unwavering stance, there is purpose. Cancer teaches the world that love is not transactional, that pain demands reverence, and that sometimes, healing means walking away with one's heart intact but closed. They are the silent guardians of emotional truth, the warriors who remember so that others may not repeat the sins of the past. Their lack of forgiveness is not an act of pettiness, but of profound wisdom. Their memory is not a chain, it is a shield. In the epic tale of the Zodiac, when Cancer does not forgive nor forget, it is not the end of love, but the rise of self-honor. It is the moon standing tall in its shadow, refusing to shine for those who tried to dim its light. It is the story of survival, of sacred protection, of emotional sovereignty carved into the stars. When Cancer chooses not to forgive nor forget, it is not merely an emotional decision, but a cosmic stance rooted in the ancient contract between soul and star. This is not a fleeting grudge or passing mood, but a manifestation of deep lunar justice, a karmic ripple echoing across lifetimes. In the natal chart, Cancer is not just the sign of sentimentality and maternal instinct. It is the keeper of ancestral memory, the sign through which the past speaks. When Cancer refuses to let go, it is because the soul senses that the pain is part of a greater lesson, a legacy, a lineage that must be acknowledged before peace can ever be attained. The constellation of Cancer, once revered by ancient civilizations as the gateway of souls, holds a sacred position in the celestial sphere. It is the place where spirit enters the material plane, the cosmic womb from which all incarnations emerge. This symbolic gateway gives Cancer a profound relationship with origins, not just personal beginnings, but collective and generational roots. When wounded, Cancer may not forgive because the wound does not belong to the present moment alone. It may carry the resonance of generations past, echoing traumas carried through bloodlines, karmic patterns repeated in cyclical silence. Thus, when Cancer does not forget, it is also carrying the burden of remembrance for those who came before. This is a sign ruled by the moon, and the moon governs not only tides and time but emotional memory encoded in the body and soul. Every phase of the moon is mirrored in Cancer's heart. The waxing of hope, the fullness of devotion, the waning of trust, and the darkness of betrayal. These cycles live within them, and when one is interrupted by betrayal, the entire rhythm of their being can fall into dissonance. In choosing not to forgive, Cancer may be seeking to realign with an inner lunar rhythm that demands solitude, introspection, and sacred mourning. In choosing not to forget, Cancer is protecting the architecture of their emotional world, making sure that what was built through trust is never demolished without consequence. To underestimate Cancer's emotional power is to forget the sheer force of the ocean. For while others erupt like fire or sever like wind, Cancer is tidal. Their emotional movements shape coastlines, alter landscapes, and carry immense weight. What looks like silence is often a deep and transformative undercurrent of emotional evolution. When Cancer holds on to pain, it is because they are still alchemizing it, turning salt into sacred water, turning sorrow into structure. Their memory becomes a reservoir of strength, a monument to emotional truth that cannot and will not be rewritten to suit another's comfort. In the soul's heroic journey, Cancer's refusal to forgive marks the part of the quest where the hero returns home, not to comfort, but to confront the inner world. Forgiveness may be a gift, but it is not an obligation. Cancer knows this better than most. For them, emotional betrayal is not just a personal slight. It is a collapse of cosmic order, a violation of the sacred trust they bestow upon the few they allow into their inner sanctum. And because their love is total, so is their grief. Because their loyalty is unwavering, so is their withdrawal when wronged. When they turn away, it is with the full weight of the moon behind them, a celestial declaration that their boundaries are sovereign and unbreachable. What others perceive as emotional stubbornness is in fact a profound act of inner justice. Cancer teaches that to truly honor one's feelings is to give them the space to rage, to weep, to remember. Forgiveness given too quickly can dilute the power of truth. Forgetting too easily can erase the wisdom earned through pain. Cancer does not offer such things cheaply. They must come naturally, if at all, through a process as vast and unknowable as the ocean floor. And when they do not come, it is because the soul has chosen integrity over appeasement. There is unmatched courage in this. The courage to sit with wounds until they become sacred scars. The courage to say, "This mattered, this hurt, and I will not let the world pretend it did not." Cancer's memory is the keeper of emotional history, and that history is not erased by time. It is immortalized through story, through silence, through the quiet strength of the one who endures. This is not weakness. This is warriorhood in its lunar form. The battlefield is the heart, and Cancer stands unshaken at the gates. The emotional depth of Cancer is matched by its mythic fortitude. In astrology, this sign is linked to the Chariot card in the tarot, a symbol of triumph through emotional control, of forward motion guided by inner truth. When Cancer does not forgive, it does not mean they are stuck. It means they are choosing a path that preserves their soul's truth rather than sacrificing it for reconciliation that rings hollow. The Chariot moves forward, but only once the inner world has been ordered and the past has been honored. From this perspective, Cancer's so-called inability to forgive or forget becomes a revolutionary act of emotional sovereignty. They remind the Zodiac that emotions are sacred, that boundaries are holy, and that the heart is not a place to be trespassed lightly. In a world that demands constant moving on, Cancer dares to stay, dares to feel, dares to remember, and through this, they become a beacon for all souls who have been told to bury their grief in silence. Cancer keeps that flame alive. Cancer tells the story that others are too afraid to speak. When Cancer does not forgive nor forget, the moon does not fall. It rises again, cloaked in shadow, silent and sovereign, watching from above. It is no longer a soft beacon, but a sentinel, a guardian, a witness to truth too powerful to be erased. And from this place, Cancer draws power not from vengeance, but from remembrance. Power not from bitterness, but from reverence. And as they carry this forward, they embody the ancient wisdom of the cosmos, that not all wounds must be healed with words, and not all pain must be released to be transcended. Some must be carried, not as burdens, but as banners. Proof that the heart, even when broken, still beats with honor. When Cancer refuses to forgive and forget, the influence of water as an elemental force reaches its most mysterious and mystical expression. Water does not follow straight lines. It flows where it must, reshapes landscapes over time, and carves canyons from mountains through persistence, not speed. Cancer, the cardinal water sign, is not passive in its emotions. It initiates, it constructs, and it protects. This refusal to release a wound is not stagnation. It is sacred resistance. It is the force of water refusing to be polluted by dishonesty, the soul rejecting the normalization of harm. In a universe where love is often diluted, Cancer holds its ground as the unwavering current that remembers what others forget and guards what others discard. The moon, as Cancer's ruling celestial body, is not just a symbol of emotions but of time itself. It governs the tides of the earth, the cycles of life, the mysteries of fertility and decay. To be ruled by the moon is to live in rhythm with something older than civilization, something primal and unspoken. When Cancer remembers, it is not simply out of emotional attachment, but because they are attuned to a rhythm of truth that never abandons what once held meaning. This memory becomes a portal. It transforms the personal into the archetypal. The betrayal of a loved one becomes a metaphor for the betrayal of trust in all forms. It transcends the individual and becomes myth, a parable woven into the soul's script. Astrologically, Cancer occupies the fourth house of the zodiac wheel, the house of roots, home, lineage, and emotional foundation. This domain is not merely about the physical structure of home. It represents the inner temple, the sacred interior landscape where a soul retreats to rest and recover. When harm comes into this inner sanctuary, it is not simply a wound. It is an invasion. It shakes the pillars of the inner temple. The choice not to forgive or forget becomes an act of fortification, the rebuilding of psychic walls, the strengthening of the inner sanctum through sacred isolation. Cancer does not respond with outward fire but with inward construction, reweaving the tapestry of the self so that it can no longer be torn so easily. This sign carries within it the mythology of the Great Mother, the divine protector, the ancestral voice whispering in dream and silence. It holds the archetype of the matriarch who never forgets her fallen, who grieves not in chaos but in continuity. Even when Cancer is masculine in embodiment, it channels the lunar feminine, watchful, intuitive, and fiercely protective. The refusal to forget is not about vengeance but guardianship. It is the soul refusing to allow the erosion of memory to dishonor what was sacred. It is love continuing to assert its value by not allowing its destruction to be overlooked or minimized. There is a divine intelligence in Cancer's pain. While others rush to label, to rationalize, to move on, Cancer sits in the mystery. This is not an emotional reaction, it is spiritual discernment. They understand what the modern world forgets, that some wounds must be named again and again until the truth is carved into eternity. They do not forget because they are healers, not the kind who apply quick fixes, but the ancient kind who walk with others through the underworld of grief, who sit beside sorrow until it speaks, who honor pain not as a problem but as a presence with something sacred to say. Their emotional endurance is unmatched. While others tire of grief, Cancer holds it with reverence. While others abandon the process, Cancer continues. They know healing is not linear and that resolution is not always found in forgiveness. Sometimes, resolution comes in the form of sacred remembrance. Sometimes, the soul must carry its grief like a banner through time, not to weigh itself down but to become an emblem of integrity, a reminder that love once lived there and left behind a legacy worthy of being honored. In this way, Cancer becomes the emotional historian of the Zodiac. They are the ones who record not facts but feelings, not events but emotional truths. They remember how it felt to be dismissed, to be betrayed, to be silenced. And they become the protectors of those truths, not just for themselves, but for all those whose stories were erased or rewritten by those who found comfort in forgetting. Cancer becomes the vessel through which those forgotten stories find form again. This sacred guardianship of memory is power in its purest form. It is the kind of power that moves nations, that fuels revolutions, that changes the course of destinies. Because when the emotional truth is finally given voice, when Cancer speaks not to appease but to declare, it carries with it the resonance of every silent cry, every unacknowledged betrayal, every tear that fell unseen. In that moment, the voice of Cancer becomes the voice of the moon itself, echoing across the night sky in a language older than time. Their silence, when they choose it, is not absence. It is potency. It is the sound of deep waters holding secrets with the weight of the cosmos. When Cancer withholds forgiveness, they are not withdrawing from life. They are choosing where to invest their sacred emotional currency. They understand that not everyone is worthy of a second entry into the sanctum of their heart. Not all bridges must be rebuilt. Some must be left in ruins as warnings, as monuments to lessons earned through pain. And in this choice, Cancer reclaims their sovereignty. They become the architect of their own emotional kingdom, a fortress not of stone but of soul. Within its walls are echoes of ancestral wisdom, the rhythms of the moon, the tides of every lifetime lived. Cancer is not weak for refusing to forgive. Cancer is mighty, for they have chosen to honor their soul's truth above all, even when the world calls for forgetfulness in the name of comfort. In the end, Cancer's legacy is not softness but strength through emotion, resilience through remembrance. They are the keepers of the lunar flame, the soul's sacred memory made flesh. Their refusal to forget is not the end of love. It is its evolution. It is the metamorphosis of grief into wisdom, of pain into purpose, of heartache into unshakable knowing. And in this transformation, Cancer does not merely survive. Cancer transcends. When Cancer does not forgive nor forget, it is not only a personal act but a cosmic recalibration, a sacred reordering of emotional justice within the great wheel of the Zodiac. Deep within Cancer's nature lies a sacred oath to protect the emotional integrity of the soul, and this oath is not taken lightly. While the world urges movement, detachment, and resolution, Cancer holds space for complexity, for contradiction, for the vast landscape of human emotion that refuses to be compressed into false forgiveness. In this refusal, Cancer becomes not only an individual navigating pain, but a living embodiment of lunar law, a vessel through which ancient wisdom reasserts its dominion. There is a level of emotional sovereignty that only Cancer understands, a sovereignty that transcends the need for external validation or superficial peace. When Cancer turns inward, retreating into the shell of introspection and silence, it is not hiding, it is fortifying. The shell is not a place of fear, but a sacred chamber of transformation, where pain is distilled into clarity and wounds are named with precision. Here, within the stillness, the soul writes its truth in moonlight, far beyond the reach of those who caused the injury. The decision not to forgive becomes a right, a declaration that the soul has drawn a sacred boundary and refuses to allow transgression to be normalized. This is a sign imbued with the sacred power of incubation. Just as the crab carries its home on its back, Cancer carries the spiritual temple within, and when wounded, this temple becomes a place of resurrection. Though the world may demand closure and resolution, Cancer answers to a deeper rhythm. A rhythm that does not rush, does not bargain, and does not pretend. The pain is not buried. It is honored. The memory is not erased. It is enshrined. For Cancer, the past is not a place to escape from but a root system from which the soul draws power. Even the sorrow, even the betrayal, becomes a nutrient, a mineral that strengthens the bones of emotional truth. In esoteric astrology, Cancer marks the gate of incarnation, the place where spirit first chooses to descend into matter, to take form. This link to the origin of being gives Cancer an intuitive understanding that every emotion, no matter how difficult, is part of the soul's architecture. And thus, when Cancer chooses not to release certain pain, it is because that pain has become foundational. It has become stone upon which wisdom is built. There is no shame in this. There is honor in knowing that even suffering, when met with integrity, becomes sacred ground. Through this, Cancer becomes a living archive of truths too powerful to be diluted by time. The emotional intensity of Cancer does not come from volatility, but from depth. Other signs may burn hot and fast, erupting with fire and then fading into ash, but Cancer is the undertow, the silent pull beneath the surface that cannot be escaped. This emotional gravity is not a weakness. It is gravitational law, the same force that keeps the moon tethered to Earth, that keeps memory tethered to meaning. The refusal to forget is a demonstration of this emotional gravity in motion. It is the soul saying, "This mattered. This shaped me. I carry it because it made me more than I was before." Cancer is not afraid to be shaped by experience. This is a sign that understands alchemy in its most human form, the transmutation of raw emotion into soul strength. Every betrayal becomes a rune etched into the inner walls of their sacred temple. Every heartbreak becomes a glyph, a sacred symbol of the lesson learned. To forgive indiscriminately would be to erase those glyphs, to sand down the walls of the temple and make it vulnerable again. Cancer chooses instead to keep them illuminated by the inner flame, visible only to those with the depth to truly understand. In sidereal and mythic traditions, the crab is also a warrior, small but armored, underestimated but unyielding. In the myth of Heracles, it was the crab who, despite its size, dared to challenge the hero in battle on behalf of Hera. And though it was crushed, it was immortalized in the stars for its loyalty and bravery. This myth speaks to Cancer's essence, the courage to fight for what matters, even when the odds are against them. The choice not to forgive becomes, then, not an act of stubbornness, but of mythic loyalty, to the self, to the sacred, to the unseen truths that others overlook. Cancer's emotional perception is also psychic. This is a sign touched by the lunar veil, with access to intuitive realms that others cannot see. When Cancer does not forgive, it may be because they have seen the soul beneath the surface, seen the root cause of harm, and recognized that the cycle must end with them. Forgiveness, in this sense, might perpetuate the illusion. Memory, held with intention, becomes the key to breaking the pattern. In this way, Cancer becomes a karmic sentinel, holding the emotional line so that future generations do not have to carry the same weight. There is also profound creative power in Cancer's memory. From their refusal to forget, art is born. Poetry, music, storytelling. All of these rise from the depths of remembered feeling. Cancer channels this emotional archive into works that move others, that stir the collective unconscious, that teach others how to feel again in a world that rewards numbness. In this way, their pain becomes more than personal. It becomes archetypal. The wound becomes the wellspring, the grief becomes the guide, and the memory becomes the muse. Ultimately, Cancer does not need forgiveness to be free. They are free in their truth. They are free in their memory. They are free in their sacred refusal to rewrite history for the sake of false harmony. In this freedom, they teach the world the highest form of emotional maturity, not the suppression of feeling, but the honoring of it. Not the forgetting of harm, but the transformation of it into legacy. Cancer stands not as the broken, but as the reborn. Not as the bitter, but as the wise. Their silence is not absence. It is eloquence in a higher tongue. Their memory is not bondage. It is remembrance as rebellion. Their refusal to forgive is not darkness. It is the light of the soul refusing to be extinguished by those who do not understand its worth. And in that defiance, in that unwavering loyalty to their own sacred truth, Cancer ascends. Not away from pain, but through it, into the immortal light of self-respect, lunar wisdom, and emotional sovereignty written across the sky. When Cancer refuses to forgive and forget, what emerges is not merely an emotional reaction, but the awakening of a cosmic archetype long misunderstood. In the deep vaults of the Zodiac, Cancer represents the threshold between vulnerability and sacred power, between the soft underbelly of emotion and the armor forged by centuries of ancestral pain. This sign does not simply carry feelings. It carries the mythos of generations. When Cancer chooses not to release a wound, they are not imprisoned by the past. They are guarding something timeless and holy within it. They are protecting the blueprint of emotional truth, the foundation upon which sacred connection is built. The soul of Cancer is woven from threads of the moon's silver light, but that light is not passive. It moves oceans, pulls at the tides, regulates cycles of life, death, and rebirth. It governs the mysteries of the womb, the heartbeat of the sea, the dreamscapes where forgotten memories speak in symbols. When Cancer remembers, it is not with bitterness but with lunar clarity. They remember through instinct, through subtle signs, through energies others are too distracted to perceive. This remembrance is not obsession. It is a form of sacred vigilance, a spiritual radar calibrated to honesty, loyalty, and emotional integrity. The strength of Cancer lies in its ability to hold duality without being torn apart. They are at once the nurturer and the warrior, the empath and the protector, the memory keeper and the threshold guardian. While others may choose to forgive out of societal pressure or spiritual bypassing, Cancer knows that true forgiveness cannot be rushed, faked, or extracted. It must arise authentically or not at all. When it does not arise, it is because something essential remains unresolved. Cancer will not betray their intuition to appease a collective that too often silences depth for the sake of superficial peace. There is a silent revolution within the Cancerian soul. It does not shout. It does not declare itself on podiums. It moves in dreams, in the stillness of reflection, in the waters of memory that wash over a soul without warning. Their revolution is the quiet, determined insistence that emotional betrayal is not erased with time or denial. It is reckoned with. It is mourned. It is woven into a new identity that rises not in spite of the pain, but because of it. When Cancer refuses to forget, it is because forgetting would mean severing the thread that connects the present self to the truth of what was endured. In the higher octaves of its essence, Cancer embodies the divine feminine principle, not confined by gender, but expressed as a force of cyclical power, regeneration, and spiritual gravity. This is the force that births and protects, that remembers and reclaims, that nourishes the soul and guards the threshold between the known and the mysterious. The divine feminine does not rush healing. She allows the darkness to speak. She does not demand forgiveness when the wound is still open. She cradles the wound with reverence, allowing it to tell its story until it has been fully witnessed. In Cancer, this principle becomes a living flame, flickering in the temple of the heart, guiding the soul back to its center through tides of emotion too vast for words. Even in astrology's deeper metaphysical frameworks, Cancer is linked not just to family and home, but to karmic inheritance. The emotional imprints we carry from generations before, the patterns passed through blood and soul lines, all find a vessel in Cancer's sacred memory. When they do not forget, it is not just personal, it is ancestral. It is a refusal to let the wounds of the lineage be dismissed or repeated. In this way, Cancer becomes a guardian of generational healing. By remembering, by feeling fully, by refusing to forgive prematurely, they become the point of transformation through which cycles of abandonment, betrayal, and emotional silence are finally broken. The protective instinct of Cancer is not small. It is cosmic. It is the same force that creates galaxies, that shields planets, that keeps the fire of life burning in a universe of cold vacuum. When they build emotional walls, those are not barriers of fear, they are fortresses of sacred discernment. Not everyone is meant to enter the inner sanctum of their soul. When trust is broken, Cancer withdraws not to punish, but to preserve the holiness of what was once shared. They are the emotional priesthood of the Zodiac, and not all hearts are worthy of their sanctuary. To re-enter, one must carry the torch of sincerity, of accountability, of deep and unwavering respect. Anything less is turned away at the gate. Cancer is also aligned with the alchemical process of water transmutation. Ice into water, water into vapor, vapor into mist, and mist into rain again. This eternal cycle is mirrored in Cancer's emotional evolution. When they refuse to forgive, they may be in the sacred phase of crystallization, when the soul becomes solid in its truth, when boundaries harden and clarity becomes absolute. Or they may be in the phase of sacred vapor, where pain becomes the formless mist that nourishes unseen dreams. They move through each stage in their own time, governed not by logic but by lunar law. To rush them is to rupture the divine order of their process. Their journey is not to remain wounded, but to carry the wound until it becomes a sigil of power. In this, Cancer is not merely a sign of sensitivity, it is a sign of transmutation, of emotion wielded like a blade of light, of memory held as a spell, of protection offered like sacred fire. The refusal to forget becomes a spell cast upon the soul, a reminder that it will never again be deceived, diminished, or destroyed by those who do not understand the magnitude of its love. In the great astrological wheel, Cancer rises not only as the nurturer but as the sentinel at the gate of emotional rebirth. They teach the world that true healing does not bypass pain, it honors it. That real strength is not loud, it is steadfast. And that sacred memory is not weakness. It is the soul's eternal anchor in the tides of human change. Through their unflinching remembrance, they light the path for those who have lost their way, carrying the lantern of emotional truth through the darkness with unwavering grace. In this path, Cancer becomes the myth reborn, the healer who does not forget, the guardian of soul and story. And in the silence of their memory, in the temple of their sacred boundaries, the stars bow in reverence. For in refusing to forget, Cancer preserves what must never be erased. When Cancer chooses the path of non-forgiveness and remembrance, it becomes an act not of stagnation, but of sacred preservation. In the immense architecture of the Zodiac, Cancer is one of the few signs entrusted with the stewardship of the past, not as a prison but as a library of soul truths. This stewardship demands a loyalty to memory so profound that it cannot be bent by social pressure, spiritual platitudes, or the illusion of surface harmony. Cancer does not merely feel emotions. It archives them in a lunar vault where time bends and the eternal echoes louder than any fleeting word. When they refuse to release a grievance, it is not vengeance. It is a conscious vow to guard the emotional history written in blood, bone, and tears. There is a profound stillness within Cancer's depth, a silence that holds storms. This silence is not emptiness but sacred listening, to the voice of the soul, to the whisper of ancestors, to the cries that went unheard when the wound was fresh. When Cancer does not forgive, it may be because they have heard the truth that others drown out. They do not forget because within the memory is encoded a soul contract, a karmic ledger, a spiritual ledger that must be balanced with honesty before peace can be claimed with honor. They hold that memory with the same care a monk holds ancient scripture, not out of fixation, but out of reverence. In their emotional fidelity, Cancer becomes the unbreakable link in the chain of soul continuity. Others may drift from truth, redefine past events, or reframe stories to suit comfort, but Cancer remains unwavering. This is not weakness. This is mythic strength. It is the kind of strength that endures through storms, across generations, through lifetimes. It is the strength of the moon itself, ever-changing in form, but eternally present in influence. Cancer answers not to fleeting daylight logic, but to the nocturnal language of intuition, of dreams, of ancestral calling. They do not forget because they are not meant to. They are the record keepers of the Zodiac, the sacred scribes of emotional reality. The Cancerian refusal to forgive is sometimes born from the betrayal of what was once deeply sacred. No other sign bonds so fully, so intimately, so completely. When they love, they merge not just hearts but spirits. To be hurt by someone Cancer has loved is to experience a soul fracture that reverberates across psychic planes. Their hurt is not surface level. It is cellular, ancestral, cosmic. To forgive without healing that fracture would be to dishonor the sanctity of the bond that was broken. So they hold the pain. They trace its origin. They examine its legacy. And in time, if the truth is honored, they may choose to transform it, but never by forgetting. There is a sacred rebellion in Cancer's memory. In a world that demands quick closure, easy endings, and clean narratives, Cancer dares to dwell. They dare to return to the places where others flinch. They gather the fragments. They piece together what was broken. They name what was denied. And in doing so, they recover the parts of themselves that others would prefer remain lost. In this epic journey of emotional reclamation, Cancer becomes not just a sign of feeling but a force of resurrection. They do not move on, they rise. Cancer's mythology is also one of divine sacrifice. The crab in the story of Heracles gave its life in service of a greater power. In return, it was elevated to the heavens. In this narrative, we see the echo of Cancer's karmic role: to carry the weight others cannot bear, to suffer deeply for the sake of truth, and in doing so, to be spiritually anointed. The pain they do not release is not always personal, it is often collective. It is the wound of the child not believed, the lover betrayed, the mother abandoned, the truth silenced. When Cancer holds on, they hold on for those who could not. Their pain becomes the torch by which others find their way. The moon, Cancer's ruler, is not only a celestial body, it is a keeper of mysteries. It governs the tides, the womb, the subconscious, and the passage of souls into and out of incarnation. Under her light, nothing false can hide. This lunar connection gives Cancer access to truths hidden beneath surface words and actions. They know when remorse is real and when it is performance. They know when forgiveness would liberate and when it would betray. And so they trust themselves. They guard the gates of their heart as a priestess guards the holy flame, as a warrior guards a fallen comrade's sword. Forgiveness may come, but only after truth, transformation, and total accountability. Cancer's path is not easy. It demands solitude, reflection, and emotional courage that few can match. While others label them too sensitive or unable to let go, they continue their pilgrimage through the inner landscape, mapping emotions like sacred geography. Every tear they have ever shed is a pearl strung upon the necklace of their becoming. Every memory they have preserved is a constellation that lights their path forward. In time, those who once judged their depth come to seek their wisdom. For in a world losing touch with soul, Cancer remembers. There is a particular magic that arises from wounds tended with reverence. Cancer becomes the healer not in spite of their pain, but through it. Their refusal to forgive can itself be healing, when it is accompanied by clarity, when it says, "This mattered. This must change. This must never be repeated." It is not always a personal vendetta. It is often a divine stand. Through this, they become protectors not only of their own heart but of the sacredness of emotion in a disenchanted world. Their voice becomes a river. Their silence becomes scripture. Their gaze becomes a mirror in which others must face their truth. The destiny of Cancer, in its highest expression, is not to remain in grief, but to alchemize grief into grace. Not to be consumed by memory, but to wield memory as medicine. Their journey through pain becomes a rite of passage that grants them access to the archetype of the wise elder, the lunar oracle, the fierce nurturer whose love is not sentimental but sovereign. In time, they do not seek revenge or demand apology. They radiate a presence so complete, so luminous, that those who wrong them must confront the weight of their own shadows in that light. And so, Cancer walks on, no longer needing to explain their choices, no longer asking for understanding. They carry their truth like a sacred scroll, unfurled only for those worthy of its ink. In their silence, there is power. In their memory, there is prophecy. In their pain, there is initiation. And in their refusal to forget, they become the keepers of what must never be lost, the soul's right to feel, to remember, to protect, and to rise. When Cancer refuses to forgive or forget, it is not simply an act of emotional resistance. It is a declaration of soul sovereignty, a profound alignment with the cosmic law of emotional truth. Beneath the shimmering tides of their nature lies a realm untouched by artifice, where feeling is not weakness but the highest form of wisdom. In that lunar terrain, every scar becomes a sigil of divine experience, and every memory a sacred echo carried not just by the heart, but by the stars themselves. Cancer is a cardinal sign, and this is no trivial detail. It signals initiation, momentum, the divine spark that begins a new cycle. While many associate Cancer with retreat and sensitivity, few recognize the quiet leadership embedded in this sign. When Cancer holds to a wound and refuses absolution, it is often leading a revolution, softly, silently, through the architecture of memory. It initiates not through command, but through emotional resonance. By standing in its sacred no, Cancer sets in motion the alchemical process that transforms pain into purpose, remembrance into resolve. The soul of Cancer is not governed by linear time. It flows through cycles, through tides, through dreams and ancestral voices. While others seek closure as a finish line, Cancer recognizes that certain experiences cannot and should not be sealed prematurely. Closure, to Cancer, is not a door slammed shut. It is a temple slowly built around truth. When they refuse to forgive, they are not delaying healing. They are crafting a deeper, more authentic transformation that honors every layer of their experience. Their journey is not about erasure, it is about integration. To forget would be to amputate part of their truth. And Cancer, ever loyal to the full spectrum of feeling, will not mutilate their soul for the sake of false peace. There is a heroic solitude that accompanies Cancer's emotional tenacity. This solitude is not exile, it is a sanctified retreat, a chosen seclusion within the temple of their own knowing. Here, they commune with the moon, with the elemental forces of water, with the collective memory of those who came before. They draw strength from that stillness. They do not need the validation of external voices to confirm the sanctity of what they feel. They have the moon, and that is enough. The moon speaks in symbols and waves, in instinct and pulse, and it confirms what logic cannot. That feeling is a form of divine intelligence, that memory is a sacred map, and that healing is not always linear, it is lunar. In the world of elemental astrology, Cancer is water, but not just any water. It is the salt water of oceans and tears, the primordial fluid of the womb, the river that remembers its source even as it moves forward. This water is not passive. It is sculpting. It wears down stone. It reshapes landscapes. It carries life. When Cancer holds onto hurt, it is that same sacred water carving a canyon of wisdom into the soul. Their pain is not purposeless. It is shaping them into a vessel vast enough to hold truth that others cannot bear. Through remembrance, they become oracles. Through grief, they become guides. Through emotional depth, they become mirrors of cosmic empathy. There is also a mythic warrior encoded within Cancer. In ancient traditions, the crab was a creature that fought on behalf of Hera, the queen of the gods. Though crushed in the fight, it was honored by the heavens. In this tale lies a powerful truth. Cancer is willing to confront immense pain for the sake of something sacred. Its fight is never for ego, but for the preservation of emotional integrity. The refusal to forgive is sometimes a shield raised in defense of the heart's sanctity. It is a refusal to allow betrayal to be normalized, to allow injustice to be quietly swept into the ocean of denial. It is a warrior's cry disguised as silence. Astrologically, Cancer also dwells at the roots of the zodiacal wheel. It governs the fourth house, the place of origin, ancestry, inner foundation. This position is not peripheral, it is primal. When Cancer does not forgive, it is often because the harm committed shook the very foundations of their being. To move on without reckoning would be to rebuild upon fractured soil. Cancer, the soul architect, refuses such instability. They would rather tear down and rebuild from truth than pretend everything remains intact. Their remembrance is the mortar, their loyalty the blueprint. What rises from this process is not merely survival, but sacred reconstruction. There is a deep magic in the way Cancer transforms pain into legacy. While others seek to escape discomfort, Cancer weaves it into a tapestry of meaning that becomes a lighthouse for others. Their memory becomes medicine. Their grief becomes poetry. Their heartbreak becomes hymnal. They are not imprisoned by the past, they are sanctifying it. In doing so, they offer others the courage to feel fully, to refuse false narratives, to reclaim the dignity of their own emotional reality. In every refusal to forget, Cancer is whispering to the cosmos, "This mattered. This will be remembered. This wound will become a wellspring, not a grave." And in that vow, they do not remain wounded, they become initiated. In that fierce loyalty to their own heart, they ascend into a new embodiment of power. Not the power that dominates, but the power that endures. Not the power that shouts, but the power that sings to the moon and is heard across lifetimes. The destiny of Cancer is not to be understood by all. It is to remain true to themselves, to carry the flame of emotional truth through ages that seek to extinguish it. They are not here to forget. They are here to remember, to protect, to transform, and to rise like the tide, quiet, steady, inevitable. The soul of Cancer is a cathedral of sacred waters, and when they refuse to forgive, it is because they are still writing scripture from the depths of the heart. And when the writing is done, when the tide has turned, when the full moon casts its light upon the truth, they will rise not as victims, but as keepers of divine memory, unbroken, unstoppable, and eternally radiant.